Hey guys, welcome back. This is the third part of our mini-series, and here we're going to make a jacket. As I have already mentioned, the process itself is quite the same. We're using the same tools and methods as before. Unfortunately, there'll be nothing new. We're just loading up the texture, adding it to color, creating a new material. It will be called jacket. But here there is a question which bothers me for a long time. How do we sew these parts together? Yes, I know that they have the same length, but the shape of the lines looks weird to me. You know, as a child, I used to play puzzles a lot, and I kind of got used to the fact that everything should correspond to each other based on ideal shapes. So a line is corresponding to a line, and so on and so forth. But here, I guess there are some sewing rules that I simply do not understand. I just can't understand how this curvy line can connect to the straight line. It just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, I have calmed down a bit, and I want to give you an advice regarding our entire pipeline, because here I have a lot of repetitive actions which can drive any person crazy. The first advice, you know how in ZBrush each stroke is essentially unique. You can use, for example, the standard brush and make some kind of a shape, but there is no way you'll be able to repeat this shape over and over again, to make this shape exactly the same each time. Here, fortunately, it's not like this. It is very easy for us to make two exactly identical shapes from scratch. Then a few words about fold strength and fold angle settings. Those are quite simple and do not have to be super precise. You just have to remember that if fold angle equals 0, then inner seam will go outside. If it equals 300, then it goes inside. So your job is to find something that looks good for your object. I just want to emphasize that when you're creating something, there are no some kind of ideal settings, ideal numbers that you can just punch in and you'll get a masterpiece. No, it's the matter of constant experiments and your personal taste, or the taste of your client if you are doing contract work. Also, when you are sewing some parts together, make sure that their length is, if not identical, but very similar. Always refer back to the 3D view and examine how the model looks there. Next advice, pay special attention to constantly changing settings like shrinkage, weft, and warp, as well as pressure. Because, in my opinion, those three are the most important settings which directly affect the look of your model, especially folds, which are extremely important for your work. For particle distance, I always use 10 for my work and 5 for the final presentation, for the final result. The layer setting or layer order is irrelevant right now. Sometimes check your normals. For this, go to the texture surface mode or Alt plus 2. If your normals flipped, it will be shown. For example, here we have such a problem. In general, you can always work in this mode. It's not prohibited to do so and perfectly okay. It doesn't show the thickness though, but overall it's fine. There are sometimes moments when you want to sew the sleeve to the body. It is supposed to be easy, but from time to time, some weird deformations happen, and you have to drag around different parts to make it normal again. To avoid this, try to freeze some clothing parts so you couldn't accidentally drag other parts of your model. I think that's it for now with advice. I'll keep silent for a couple of minutes and then we'll come back to you. Alright, I'm back. Let's talk about something important here. Here we have the physical property section. If we click on it, we'll see a list of available presets, which essentially simulate different types of materials like silk, cotton, fur, and so on and so forth. Also, you might have noticed that in front of each preset there is a prefix D, R, S, and so on. R means realistic, so it is the closest to the realistic looking material, at least that's how the developers put it, but it slows down the simulation quite a bit. D is the direct opposite. It works best with the simulation and is better for weaker machines, like mine, for example. Here I'm using the cotton preset. And why cotton, you might ask? Well, I mean, we have a jacket. Why in the hell do we use cotton? You see, it doesn't matter what the preset is called. If it looks good, I will use it anyway, even if it's a bit illogical from the realistic point of view. And by the way, I nearly forgot about the prefix S. These types of materials are used for something more or less rigid. Things like collars, shoulder loops, belts, maybe tents. So something which isn't as soft as the other regular materials. Now, everything that has an orange outline uses the jacket material, to which I have applied the cotton preset. By the way, under the preset section, we have details section. Here we have a lot of settings for fine-tuning each material or for creating your own materials. In this section, however, I normally use only three settings: stretch, weft, warp, and shear. For better understanding what each does, let's take a look at this picture. Shear stretches the clothing diagonally. The lower the setting, the stretchier your clothes, and thus the fewer folds you'll have. It kind of resembles the sack. The higher this setting, the less stretchy your material is, something like leggings or maybe vacuum sack. Weft is a horizontal stretching, warp vertical stretching. Here's another example. As you can see, weft and warp are the same in both pictures. The only difference is in shear. So again, if we set the maximum number the material is trying to envelope the object, sticks to it. If it is the minimum number, it just hangs and that's it. And right now we're going to make an elastic band at the bottom of the jacket. It is very easy, just duplicate the band that we had before and sew the copy on top of the original. Do not forget to set layer to 5 for our duplicate. Selecting the side part using the offset as internal line and creating inner seams with 12 distance and number of 2. We're creating these inner seams to make our elastic band to actually look like one. Next, I am adding depth through fold strength, and I'm also adding thickness through the thickness setting. Another interesting slider, pressure. I like to call it inflation. Bigger the number, the more inflated your clothing is. However, here I don't see any changes. Okay, I will deal with it later. Right now, I'm creating the base for some decorative elements. For now, I will leave it as it is. Here we're doing the same as we did with jeans, creating parts for pockets. I'd like to say something and actually repeat myself, but it is important. Get used to the fact that something is always happening on the screen. Get used to the constantly changing settings, especially shrinkage and pressure. Those I use the most. Particle distance, on the other hand, I always keep at 10 and set it to 5 for the final presentation, for the final result, to make it look more appealing. The layer setting is irrelevant right now because if you set it incorrectly, you'll see it quite clearly on your model. Here I'm cutting off the part of the clothing because I want to make it a different color. Unfortunately, there is no other way to do it. You have to cut it off, change material, and then change the color. Now I'm separating the center to create the zipper. It will give us a blue line, which we have to use to indicate where this zipper is supposed to be. Obviously, both sides should have the same length. If we do everything the same, this sewing line will appear. And for now, we'll not talk about the zip slider settings since they're very simple. I will just mention that I have changed the size of the slider, made it bigger, and flipped the zipper normals. Then I moved the slider lower just to see how it looks. And here it is for today. The jacket is ready. Later I maybe fix some minor parts, but overall it is quite good. And that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next video.